Welcome to Title Talk, a podcast for real estate investors where we cover tips, tricks, and trends in the industry.
This podcast is all about providing valuable insights to help you maximize your investment opportunities.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, Title Talk is the place to stay in the know and get inspired.
So grab your headphones, tune in, and let's talk title.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Phenomenal, Dina. How you doing today?
I am good. I'm wondering about how to shrink this weird looking background so everybody can see our face.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think. Yeah, it looks fine to me.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. It might just be your screen, Dina.
Okay, maybe it's my screen. All right. Well, I'm so glad to see you. How's Texas?
It's great. I've been here for a few days already. I was at Vid Summit, which is a YouTube creator summit, and you get to hang out with some of the biggest creators in the space of YouTube, and got to see Mr. Beast and hear all about how he's been growing his channel, and pretty interesting cat. But I got to collab with a lot of great folks, and I'm just really thrilled that I had the opportunity to do that. Now I'm at a meditation retreat also in Dallas, and so I went from a convention to now a retreat where I'm just going to kind of disappear inside myself for a little while.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I'm super glad to go live with you for the first time. We're not together on this, and we have a special guest today.
Yes, I'm excited. Why don't you do the honors and introduce Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, guys, you're in for a real treat. We have Rick Wittstock with IPX 1031 Exchange. He's a qualified intermediary and a total rock star in the industry. If any of you guys have done a 1031, you definitely know he is a familiar guy in the space. He's been in the business about 25 years. And you guys have one thing in common.
What is that?
So he went to school in Canada.
Oh, really? Where'd you go to school, Rick?
Dalhousie University. I'm Canadian.
Well, I also am Canadian.
Yeah, we do have that in common.
I'm a dual citizen. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. I went to the University of Calgary.
Right on.
I wasn't smart enough to get into Dalhousie. I know that's a very, very good school. But what did you take in university?
Business management.
Business management. So, do you find that you use a lot of what you learned in college here in your world?
Some of it. It's been a while since I've been in college. I don't want to date myself too much, but it's been a while. Yeah.
It's an interesting question because I get, a lot of people that watch us are, their age range is all over the place, especially when I'm on TikTok. So I got all these little kids that follow me, and they ask the question, what do I do in college days? Should I go? And it was funny because I was in Penn State. I was lecturing in Penn State about real estate. And oddly enough, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm like professor for the day. But I talked to somebody in the admissions department and the student relations, basically like a counselor there, an admissions counselor. And they had told me that 9 out of 10 students that enroll in college do absolutely nothing that's in line with their degree for their future. Right. For their careers. 9 out of 10.
That's
90,
crazy.
If my coaching program had a 1 out of 10 follow through rate, they would put me in jail.
It wouldn't be very successful. 1 out of 10
would not be successful. So it's just it's interesting how the world of university and college has really played out. But Rick, I'm really excited to talk to you because I think 1031 exchanges are really fascinating. One of the main things that I think is really important for people to understand is, first, I want to ask everybody in the chat if you have ever done a 1031 exchange, okay, put a Y in the chat. I just want to know how many people have done a 1031 exchange. And if you don't even know what a 1031 exchange is, put an X in the chat. So put a Y in the chat if you've done a 1031 exchange. Put an X in the chat if you have no flipping idea what we're talking about. I just want to get an understanding of how we're So we got a lot of
We got X's.
X's.
No.
Idea. Woo!
Wow. Well, this is going to be fun.
What is he? What is it? He says it. You're gonna learn today.
Absolutely. This is exciting.
So Rick, start us off because we've got folks in here who are itching to learn about a 1031 exchange.
Right.
What is a 1031 exchange? Why do people 1031 exchange? What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? Educate us, my friend.
Yeah, I got you. So 1031 exchange is, and I'm not surprised to see all those X's.
That's a lot of X's.
That's a lot. I mean, I do nothing but educate on 1031 exchange, and it's a repeat. It's just like I keep saying the same thing over and over and over. And even veteran real estate agents and investors are not utilizing this benefit. It's huge when it comes to investors because you earned that equity in that property. You dealt with those tenants for however long it was. And now you got this nice little escrow check that might be coming to you. And if you don't do a 1031 exchange, where does almost half of that go? Uncle Sam. So we don't want to go Uncle Sam because we see where they do with the money. It goes into a big pot and whatever happens to it from there. I'm not sure, but yeah. So 1031 exchange.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that.
So it's a very valuable tool. So when you're looking at selling your properties, your investment properties, and you want to keep growing that portfolio, it's as simple as contacting me, set up an exchange, find another property of like kind. And we're going to cover that, I'm sure, because like kind is the thing that is the most confusing when it comes to 1031. And as long as you want to buy more real estate and build up that net worth, 1031 is the vehicle to get you there.
Amazing. So it's a way to defer the capital gain, right?
Absolutely.
But it doesn't take away the capital gain. You're kicking the can down the road, right?
Right. Yeah. You're kicking the can down the road until you drop, basically. So that's a little slogan we always say is that you can 1031 exchange as long as you want. And there's a little exit other than dropping, which is not so pleasant for the investor. And that's what they call the stepped up basis. So there's a couple ways to exit. You can go and do 1031 exchange, buy and build up that real estate portfolio, and then your heirs get all the money. Great, right? For the investor.
Yep.
That's one thing. But the other option is that you can convert your property into what they call your dream home. The IRS came up with this in 2008. Says that you can take your investments, do an exchange. The only caveat to that is you got to hold on to that property for 2 years as an investment. And then guess what? On the third year, it's your primary residence. Start claiming it. And then down the road, you fall into that primary residence exemption, which is free money, right? $500,000 if you're married, $250,000 if you're single. So that just changes the category from one going into the other.
Wow. I had that question on the top of my mind because is that the only time you can do a 1031 on a personal? Like for instance, say for me, right? I have a personal residence, it's paid off. I want to sell it and move into a house that I'm going to give you the real numbers. My house is worth about 2.5.
Right.
I want to move into a $5 million house. Right.
Yeah.
Can I do that in a 1031 exchange? Can I not do that in a 10? Is it not applicable because it's my primary?
It's not applicable to the primary residence. You got that. They've got a whole other category for primary residence, and that's the 250, 500,000. It's the 121 guy, which nobody knows that guy, but he's out there, and he'll handle that one for you. But yeah, for primary residence, you went 2.5. It really depends on what your basis is or what you bought that 2.5 for. So if you bought it for $2 million, then you're 500,000, you're married, found jointly, you're tax free on that. Now, if you go a little, if you bought it for 1.5, now you get $1 million worth of capital gains, you're going to get the exemption for 5. Now, I don't deter people calling me on the primary residence because there's mixed use exchanges or mixed use sale. I had a client call me up a month ago here locally in Arizona, had similar to your numbers, but he made $800,000 on it. So his primary residence made $800,000, and that means he has to pay on $300,000. Rough numbers, that's like $60,000, $70,000 to Uncle Sam.
Right.
So what he did with the conversation was like, oh, I can't really help you, but tell me about your property. He rented out the property, not to renters. He rented it out to the four-legged kind of renters.
Fur babies.
Yeah. Well, bigger than fur babies.
Like
They're the ones
horses?
yeah. He had a horse. He had a horse stables that he rented out on a property and a corral. So with the numbers, that 300,000 now was investment part of his property. He was able to do a 1031 exchange on the. Oh, there's the fur baby. How cute!
Like, speaking of fur babies,
yeah, I love Frenchies.
Coco, you're on.
So he was able to dual exercise two parts of the tax code and avoid paying capital gains tax. So
amazing.
Yeah, always talk to the experts because it in that case it saved them like 60, 70 grand in capital gains tax.
So let's break it down a little bit for everybody, because I think that here's the cool thing about my audience. I have trained thousands of people across the country to be able to go out and find deeply discounted properties that have an opportunity to force appreciation.
Right.
Right. So I wholesale deals are my bread and butter. And everybody who's watching this right now, they're either learning how to wholesale, have properties available right now that they're actively marketing. Right. So how does one get their property in front of a 1031 buyer? Because I would imagine that person is pretty dang ready to pull the trigger on a deal. And how quickly can that transaction fund or close? Can we fit a 1031 in with a wholesale transaction and have it be seamless without there being some janky, timeline differences or something?
There's some janky timelines when it comes to 1031 because you got to remember who wrote the tax code, right? So there's a little janky there, but
they don't make it easy. There's no like easy button.
There is, because the easy button is calling me, and I can help you with that. Now, I'm a national company, so I do have access to a lot of investors when they're looking to buy replacement properties. And I'll give you the timeline. The timeline sounds really skinny when you want to do a 1031 exchange, because you've got 45 days. They call that the identification period. That hits off at the close of escrow of the investment property. So 45 days, you could spend that on a cruise ship. You may not have enough time to find your replacement property,
right?
So
well, I've been in situations where there's people like, I just need something. I need something right now. So give me something. And so that, those are the opportunities, right? And so do you have you ever presented your clients opportunities?
Yeah, we anytime I have opportunities to present, I do, because I want my clients to be successful in their exchange. So having that avenue there is key. Because
did I just uncover a national home buyer with people with capital ready to deploy that need to deploy it in a matter of weeks
or days? Because remember,
days.
Yeah. So that is an option, absolutely. So that's something that we can put together. I'm excited about that part of it.
Let me ask you this. Are you allowed to make money on that deal?
I make my fee and my money on the deal. So I do about, just out of my office, but I'm national, just here in West Coast, I do about 500 exchanges a month. So
holy crap.
So
we don't bring the small fish on Title Talk, people.
Yeah.
Would you be allowed to, for instance, have a marketing fee? Could I pay you a marketing fee for attaching me to one of your buyers?
I work for a big corporation, so maybe we talk about that offline. But no, we make enough money off our fee and so on. Okay. Yeah. And volumes are our game.
I am extremely happy that you are on this episode today. The people who didn't show up today are missing out big time. So
big time.
Tell me about the kind of properties that you are typically dealing with your customer base.
That's where we go back to that like kind thing. So like kind is the guy that owns a lot in Minnesota. He bought it, never did anything with it, or owns a farm. I deal with those guys. I deal with the single family investor that bought an Airbnb. That Airbnb is not doing so hot right now. They want to get out of that to go into 12-month rental property, or they want to get into multifamily, commercial. So I deal with anything from like a $50,000 lot all the way up to a $100 million commercial property.
So does the $50,000 lot seller have to identify another piece of vacant land?
No,
It's just got to be what would you qualify as a like property to a $50,000 piece of dirt?
Anything that's real property. So dirt can go into a commercial property, can go into a residential property, or back into dirt. All of those count as real property. That's the part of the
price point matter. Does price point matter? Can you go
the price point matters. So if it was like, we'll build it up a little from 50, say it's a $500,000 single family property. They have to go off and find new property or properties of 500,000 or greater, but they get the minus commissions and closing costs. It's a net sales price that you carry. So on the 500,000, we'll say commissions, closing costs, you're going to net sales price 480. So they would have to buy 480 if they just want to buy one, but if they want to buy two, they can buy two properties at it up to 480. If they're a little shy and they come in at 450, that's okay. You're just gonna have to pay a little bit of money to Uncle Sam. But
does intent matter, Rick?
What's that?
Intent.
Big thing with IRS is that's their whole deal, is what is their initial intent when they're investing in properties. So 1031 exchange is capital gains, long-term capital gains tax deferment. There's ordinary capital gains tax or short-term capital gains tax, and that's basically a rule of thumb, not written anywhere, but a basic rule of thumb is you have to own it for at least 1 year, 1 day. Anything less than that falls into ordinary income. But here's another caviar, little nugget, is that if you bought a property and your intent is that you want to Airbnb it, and hey, it's not working out 6 months later, HOA, whatever the case is, if your intent was to do this, 6 months later, you get what they call an unsolicited offer, or you can show that your intent was not working. You can get out of that early. So you can exchange out of that property 6 months into it instead of waiting.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Say that again in case people weren't listening.
No, that's the nugget. It's basically that if you bought a property and your intent was to hold this Airbnb forever, and 6 months in, it's not cutting out for whatever reason. HOA doesn't want Airbnbs. They change the rules, or you're just not cash flowing. And then you get what they call an unsolicited offer. Unsolicited offer is...
What is an unsolicited offer?
As long as it's not marketed on the MLS or any national social media. So
Rick, could you send a property to somebody in your world, something, and consider it unsolicited?
Yes, we're on a national page right now. So, there's some gray areas. Again, it comes down to what your intent is on the property. And if it doesn't work out, you can get out of it early. I'll give you a quick example. I had a couple brothers out of California. They made very well on their, I don't know what this property is, but it was like a $2 million property they sold out of Fresno. And they wanted to do an exchange out of this rental property, and they moved their asset with the exchange into a local Airbnb that was out in Fountain Hills. So they bought that one with the exchange for $2 million. Very busy, active Airbnb just about a year ago. They literally had only seen the property once before they closed on it. So they went out to go look at it. It was occupied by a regular tenant. And that regular tenant's like, I didn't know this property was for sale. I would have put an offer in on it. And guess what? She asked the brothers, what did they buy it for? And they say, we bought it for $2 million, but we're in an exchange. And they're like, well, what if I gave you 2.3 right now, cash? They called me back and said, can I do it? I said, let's run it by your tax advisor. Yes, unsolicited offer. They've only owned it less than 2 months, and they made $300,000 on the property and able to do another 1031 exchange.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's
normally the holding period is a year. Normally the holding period
it's normally a year, buy and hold for 1 year. And basically what the IRS wants to have is that they have a record of this was an investment property, that you claimed it on your taxes at least 1 year on your taxes. So when you go do an exchange, they're not like, well, hey, I don't even know about this property. They want to at least know that it was an investment property. So 1 year mark, there's gray on that too. It's interpretation by their tax advisor. So if you bought in November of this year and you sold in March of next year, that could be considered a year depending on the tax advisor. Because you're going from 23 to 24.
I'm honestly, my mind is blown right now because I can see so many opportunities to monetize, you know, it really to be able to flip in 1031, right? Because again,
Absolutely.
intent matters, but okay, could I fix and flip 1031 to 1031? Could I fix a house up, force appreciation, sell it in a 1031, identify another potential flip, hold it,
You
fix it,
can.
force appreciation, sell it, flip into the next? I could do that.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to intent and time that you hold it. But a lot of my fix and flippers, depending on what time they buy it in the year, if it's like the last 2 quarters of the year, that might trick you into the next year, and then that would qualify for the 1 year. So
What? So it doesn't even have to be the year; it just has to be the next
The
calendar
tax,
year.
it's got. He said you got to claim it on your taxes, right?
Well,
So
you got to have it at least 1 year in your taxes. So if you bought, say, in October, and it's still subject to their tax advisor. That's my disclaimer. But they file their taxes 2023 come April. They sell that property in 2024. There's already a 1 year on their tax returns. Because here's the other nugget. The minimum amount of time that you have to rent a property out or hold it as an investment is 14 days a year. That's written right in the tax code. Yeah, 14 days a year.
For it to qualify as an investment property.
Well, that's as a rental. Investment property could be just a raw piece of dirt, but to qualify as a producing rental property, 14 days a year. So snowbirds, winter people that do their properties, they don't rent it out when they're not there. They're missing out. I get that all the time. They're like, oh, all I had to do is rent it out for 14 days when I wasn't using it, and then I could qualify. It's as simple as that. And that's the miss thing about this tax code to 1031 exchange. It's just people look at it, they Google it, they get all this misinformation, and then the attorneys and CPAs write it out to make it look really confusing. But to dumb it up, it's basically you got one property, you want to buy more properties, this is the vehicle to get there without paying capital gains tax.
I would love, Rick, I think everybody in the chat, by the way, is totally blindsided. They're like,
There's a
oh
lot of
my
exercise.
gosh,
Yeah.
what is going on? This is amazing. So guys, if you're getting value from this, please like and share with your friends so they can be part of this conversation as well.
Yes.
And let's answer Galen's question too.
Okay.
He's asking for a little bit of clarification
Yeah.
on.
So Galen asked, Dina and Rick, can you clarify if I have a rental that I've owned for more than 2 years and I gained $100,000 in equity, how do I convert that into my forever home and not pay capital gains?
Perfect. That's almost exactly my example. So you've owned it for more than 2 years. You're way into that. It's capital gains tax deferment. So you just have to sell that property, do an 1031 exchange, buy another property of the same value or greater, and then you have to hold it. Actually, that property you have there, if you had it for 2 years, you don't even have to sell it. Unfortunately, you can just turn that into your primary residence now, because the minimum that you have to rent it to convert it is 2 years. But if you want to get something a little nicer,
all he needs to do is move in.
Yeah, that's it. Start claiming on your taxes. Now this is your primary. And then
I'm like completely shocked, honestly. Like this is blown. I had no idea. So, I've been on this kick about trying to figure out how to mitigate tax. Every year I have a lot of earned income in my wholesaling business. And so this year I had a $900,000 tax bill.
That's
that
hard to
hurt.
write. Yeah,
it's hard to write a check like that. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm Indian, so it's even harder for me.
It dries up halfway through, right?
Yeah. No, it's like
too many zeros.
It is too many zeros. And so, I'm always looking for ways to be able to mitigate my tax. And, buying and selling houses is something that I do a lot. And I've never used a 1031 exchange. Now, here's the reason why I've never used a 1031 exchange. And this is going to probably make you laugh. And I know that you're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe that you would even think that. But I watched an episode of American Greed. And there was a man on that show who was a qualified intermediary who basically ran a Ponzi scheme through his 1031 trust account. And it was this incredible, it was just so much. And so how secure is the money in your account?
Well, that episode that you watched, I talk about that all the time in my classes I teach, because the guy's name is Ed Oakham. And he had no end game. He was just blowing exchangers' money. So our industry is unregulated, and mainly because there's not enough. My official title is a qualified intermediary or accommodator. So in the whole country, there's probably less than 200 of us. So we went to the regulating authorities. Hey, let's get regulated like everybody else that handles money. And they're like, well, we can't support paying somebody in every state to manage only 200 people. They just can't collect enough fees from us. So we're on the honor system. We have to self-regulate ourselves. So good thing is IPX, the company that I work for and manage, is Fortune 300 company, Fidelity National Finance. So
yeah, so we, Fidelity owns them.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
so there's no way that because even if you had a bad actor, Fidelity would just write the check and get it done with.
Well, we have $100 million Fidelity bond on every one of our exchanges. So if there's any misappropriate funds,
of course, Fidelity owns everything.
They own everything. Yeah.
This is such great information. So there were some questions here from Eddie I want to get to.
Sure.
He was wondering about like volume here. Let me see if I can pull that up.
I saw one about like how many can you do in 1 year?
Yeah, Eddie asked, hi Eddie, by the way. He said, can you buy 3 houses on a 1031 from the sale of 1 house?
Absolutely. There's no limit on how many upfront that you're selling. We call the ones you're selling, we call those the relinquished properties. And there's no limit on how many replacement properties. The key is, though, you got to fit it in those timelines. Me being doing it as long as I have, I know how to kind of make those numbers work. And where you want to buy more time than 45 days, we talked about that window in the beginning of this podcast, you can control, especially last year and the year before. It was crazy seller's market. So what do you control? You control when your property closes in a seller's market. So buy time, put a contingency on it. So you got 60 days before your official clock even starts, or have a contingency until I find my replacement properties. Yeah. So a lot of times investors, you're an investor that if they want the property bad enough, they'll wait a couple of weeks.
Right.
Maybe, and that's one way to buy more time, but there is no limit on how many upfront and how many you go into. I had a client a couple of years ago, 50 rental properties all across the West Coast. And he wanted to, I'm a licensed realtor, but I hang my hat, but I don't use it and I'm active. And he called me up and says, look, I got 50 houses I want to sell. It's like, oh, my real estate hat thing started. Okay, I can list all 50 houses for you. But he sold all 50 houses. We talked him into doing 5 different exchanges, because what he wanted to do is he wanted to convert those single family into multifamily. So we did 10 for 1 on each one of those exchanges.
Let's talk about that in terms of volume in one exchange, because could he not just do all of them in one exchange, or would that not be appropriate?
He could, but he was looking at wholesalers, and the haircut was a little bit too close to the scalp a little bit. So he wanted to get a little bit more money. So wholesalers ended up buying his properties, but he packaged them off in 10 instead of 50, and he got a little left on the bone.
How do we buy from your customers as well? I trade in my own company. In my own company, I'll do 1,000 houses a year,
right?
Which is not what you're doing, 500 a month. So we're not the same, right? But as I said, I've got thousands of people across the country, and I have 120 franchises across the country as well, who would all like to supply you houses and buy houses from your investors. Yeah. What would be a method my brain is breaking right now, because I think, well, what about Rick? You must have friends in the business. What if we got all of you guys together and we made a 1031 Voltron, where we created some kind of exchange where we put all of these properties that were appropriate for a 1031 buyer that are available right now from wholesalers with severe amounts of equity in them, and allow the piranhas to eat? Yeah, no, I mean, I'm all for it. I've done similar things to that in the past, and they worked out, and I'm still doing that with some other wholesalers currently, but you're the guy, so you got bigger portfolio. You
heard it here first, guys. Voltron coming soon.
Voltron soon. I like it. I'll just change my shirt instead of saying IPX. I'll say Voltron 1031. 1031
Voltron. I love that you get the reference. Only there's not a lot of people who get the reference, but I dated myself a little bit by
It's
saying
also
that.
the Canadian thing too. So
Yes.
I have the dual citizenship too as well.
That's a dual citizenship is fun because you really don't get harassed at the border either way.
Right.
They're like, oh, you're American, come on in. You're a Canadian, come on in, eh?
Which book
Even
you want to
during
see? You want to see
COVID?
my Canadian one? You want to see my American one?
No, during COVID, it was terrible. You had to,
Yeah.
it was a mess. It was a mess.
Canada
But
was really locked down during that
they
time.
sure were. Yeah. Okay. So now we have an idea of this. Tracy asked, can you deduct capital gains off your taxes as an expense? That's a tax question, Tracy. I don't know if Rick can answer that, but Rick.
Yeah. I mean, everything I say, disclosure, you still have to run it by your tax advisor, but no, you cannot deduct your capital gains off your taxes. So what happens is when you sell a property, escrow sends to the IRS, to the government, that you either have a taxable sale, and this is the check they cut you, or you did a 1031 exchange. So they're going to be looking either for your 1031 documentation when you file your taxes, or they're going to be looking for the money. But the only thing you can deduct from capital gains that you don't have to pay is if you did a capital improvement to the property. Okay. So capital improvement, of course, if you're fix and flipping and adding value to the property, a pool or addition to the house, all those things are tax deductible off the capital gains.
So that brings a good point up, though, Rick. So the relationship between title and escrow and your services. Can you talk a little bit about the seamlessness of that and kind of how that works? Because I just think, Bill Foley is just a brilliant man, and there's a reason that he owns a lot of companies.
he fills in all the spaces that we don't have to go outside of Fidelity. So, but it's streamless is because IPX, we're the 800-pound gorilla. We've been in the business since the 80s. So where that comes into effect is that we have it very automated. I mean, before I got on this call, I just put together, well, I can't say who the company is, but it was an $8 million transaction coming out of California, buying here in Arizona, that they forgot to set up the exchange, a big commercial brokerage, huge commercial brokerage that does multifamily. She sends over an email, Rick, it's 3:00. Can you put an exchange together? We're closing in the morning. So we were able to do that today to get that one done. So
you do a fire drill 1031 that quickly?
We can. I'm not the only guy behind it. I'm the guy that's the front guy that supports and puts the efforts out for IPX. But I have a great team behind me. We call my people, instead of escrow officers, we call them exchange officers. So
do they wear badges?
They do. They and they have a holster because it is Arizona, right?
Oh, so badges and a weapon. Love it.
Yeah.
So
it's called a mouse and a keyboard.
Exchange officers have badges.
They do, or they should, right? Yeah.
Are there a limit to how many 1031s one can do in a year?
As many houses as you have. So there is no limit. If you got 10 houses and you want to sell them all in the same month, or like my guy that had 50, you can do as many as you like within the year or within the same month or day. Doesn't matter. You're not limited to how many exchanges you do. You do have that wait period that we talked about before between you do another exchange. So you sell one, you have to hold it for at least a year before you do it, unless you get that unsolicited offer that we talked about. I mean, here's an example. I'll give you this one. I always tell this story when I teach a class to realtors or CPAs or attorneys, and you'd be surprised. My go-to is go talk to your CPA. And 9 times out of 10, they call me back and said that my CPA doesn't know enough about 1031 exchange. So I have to send him all the documents so he can read it over so he can give you his opinion on it. But this guy, 22 years old, started with me about 10 years ago. And he had a duplex in downtown Phoenix, and he just wanted to build up his portfolio. So he spoke to a CPA that I taught a class to, sold that duplex, did an exchange within 2 years, bought 2 duplexes, took those duplexes, bought 4, then he did another exchange. He bought like 5 commercial properties. Now he's got investments all across the United States. He's in his 30s now, and he's probably on paper worth about $15 million. And he
just flipped up property to property to
property. One of them. I mean, I've been involved with every one of his exchanges along the way, and that's all he did.
Can you 1031 from a trust?
Yeah, trust, LLC, whatever the taxpayer is, you can exchange from.
Can you 1031 from a trust owned by a 501c3? For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a
charity,
a nonprofit charity.
Yep, you can. It would have to make sense with the nonprofit charity. It may or may not make sense, but for the most part, yes.
What about crypto?
Crypto, well, you work for your company is the same parent company as
Somebody's going to
mine.
be asking though and not know the answer.
Crypto it's there, but it depends on what corporate says. But if it's a investment property, crypto doesn't matter. It's just a matter of the real estate and who invests the property on the property that's being sold. Now, there's disregarded entities, and that's the thing that gets people confused about, is that you might have an LLC or a partnership that owns the property on the title, but that may not be the taxpayer. You might be individually filing your own taxes. They just put that LLC on there for investors to protect your liability against anybody suing you or finding your assets. So if it is a disregarded entity, trust, LLC, or whatever, you can take it out of that trust, LLC, and put an individual name so you want to buy more properties. They get maybe a better interest rate because in LLCs, trust, sometimes there's a little bit of a bump there.
What about creative? Okay, I got a lot of people that do subject to. They're taking on properties that they're getting subject to. For those of you that are not familiar with what that means that they're taking over a property, taking title to the property, but they're not taking over the mortgage. So they're owning the property subject to the loan. Can you 1031 from a sub 2 to another sub 2, or can you 1031 from a sub 2 to cash, or can you 1031 from cash to a sub 2?
I've been giving you yeses and yeses and yeses, but that one might be a little tight because they're not technically the taxpayer on that one, because they're still the taxpayers who's on the vesting of the property. So great.
If they take title, just not
the mortgage. Title, yeah.
Absolutely. So they do in a sub 2. They do take title. So it's not like an agreement for sale where they're not taking title. This is where they're taking title, but the mortgage is staying in the original mortgager's name.
But do they pay taxes on anything?
It doesn't necessarily mean that they had to pay taxes per se. It just means that they're on title, that they are the taxpayer. So
do you have an affiliate program?
What's in for what do you mean?
For me to refer you business. So for me to refer you,
we can talk offline on stuff. So we the people that are here online, we just met today on this side of it. So we'll work out some of those kinks.
You're in Phoenix, right?
Yeah, he's
okay, wonderful. We got to go have lunch. I am.
Yeah, for those of you guys that are watching this and freaking mind blown, I want to share Rick's contact info so that you guys can reach him. Put in the subject title talk so that he knows where you found him. And Rick, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Probably my mobile number. So 602-793-1558.
Your phone might start blowing up.
My phone's right here. Yeah.
Send Rick a text right now with your name and with your full name. Let's show him how much let's
show Rick some love.
How much we love this.
Look, it's
Natasha, please put that phone number in the chat. There you go. Thank you so much. There it is, guys. If you didn't catch it, that's the phone number. We definitely have been learning a lot from Rick today, and I think if you have the opportunity to do business with this man, it would behoove you to do that. Now, I had this crazy idea just now, Dina, when you said, Fidelity owns IPX. This is why Fidelity needs to buy my company, Keeg Lee, because we could just feed all of the IPX clients properties from company to company to company, and Fidelity owns it all.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
I really hope Bill's watching right now.
I hope, Bill, if you're watching this right now, call me.
Bill Foley, it's, the Golden Knights have not, completely dominated yet this season, so you got to have time to watch Title Talk. Absolutely. Coming off the Stanley Cup, rock stars,
and that's also a Fidelity.
No, that's not a Fidelity thing.
It's a Bill Foley.
It's a Bill thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill owns the Vegas Knights.
Bill owns the Knights. Yeah. He doesn't own anything and doesn't turn into gold. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, as soon as he took over, they win the cup, right? It was pretty close.
Well, what was interesting was he said we'll go to the finals within like the first 3 years and we'll win the cup within the first, I think, 6.
Yep.
And his prediction came true, like when he formed the team. So I think that was pretty spectacular. They went to the finals year 1 and they won. They just won. So
And if you ever been in one of their games, it's their intro.
unbelievable.
It's very exciting. It's Vegas. It's Vegas
It's
stuff.
so Vegas. We all need to go to a game together.
100%. We got to go to a game together. Wayne, yes, this it is recorded. It's going to stay forever on my YouTube. I'm going to chop this up into a whole bunch of reels for my Instagram and for shorts as well, because I think this was probably one of the most like information packed episodes that we've done. Again, you saw how many people here are unfamiliar with this, but we all need to be familiar with this. We need to be. Absolutely. Why do we need to be familiar with this as wholesalers, guys? Because these are ready, willing, and almost desperate buyers at some point. These guys need to pull the trigger and close a deal. All right. They're also trying to disposition some of their properties, and again, because these are investors, they may not be interested in remodeling the property and forcing more appreciation and going through that brain damage, which for as wholesalers, that's what we're looking for. I'm looking for things in original condition or needing a little bit of work. And so there is absolutely a synergy between wholesalers and users of a 1031 exchange. In fact, if you have not been mining 1031 buyers, it's probably because you had no idea what it was about. And today that changed. You actually have not only knowledge, but how to create this. Now, when you're dealing with these 1031 potential buyers, right? If they've got to take a deal, what would you say is the primary source of their deals right now before I come into the picture? Because I'm going to change it.
They just work with their local realtor. Basically, that's their source. I mean, of course, there's other things that I introduce them to, but for the most part, that's the biggest thing on 1031 exchange is they need to find that replacement property. And if we have more opportunities for them, we're going to have more successful exchanges. I mean, and just so you know, I know you got a lot of information today, but there is more than just the normal forward exchange that's available. There's reverse exchanges, there's improvement exchanges, there's tons and tons of other stuff.
Tell us more, Rick. What are these?
I have investors that all they do is they sell their property. They do what they call an improvement exchange. So if you want to do a fix and flip and use your tax-free money to fix it up, an improvement exchange is the way to go. You you sell your property, the exchange funds go into an exchange account. You find a replacement fixed property that needs to be fixed up, but you bought it for $3, but your exchange was $5. You take that extra $200,000. We hold those funds and give you up to 6 months to do all your improvements on it. And those are tax-free cash from your first sale that you can use for improvement exchange.
Do you guys pay interest on the funds you hold?
Yeah, we do. Don't get too excited though, because our accounts are very uncommon. They have to be very liquid so that if you call me up, hey, I need my money for earnest on Friday for this escrow, or I'm closing on this day. We have to have very labor intense accounts. So what you would get is very similar to what a checking and savings account is, which has creeped up a little bit. I mean, a couple of years ago, you're getting nothing. Now you're getting maybe 1-2% while the money's sitting there. So you get a little nugget there.
Love it. Galen asked another question, additional questioning regarding my first one. If I convert my rental into a primary in order to avoid capital gains, do I need to stay in it for an additional 2 years from the moment of the conversion? Great question.
That's a great question. Yeah. You have to qualify for the for the 121 tax code, the primary residence exclusion, 2 out of the 5 years. So 2 is the minimum. You could sell it at that point and not have any issues. But the longer you stay in it, less red flags may come up on that side. But the rule writes that 2 years is all you have to stay in the property as your primary residence.
Why don't you take this one, Dina?
What is the best way to go about it? The next property is actually of lesser value. Are you saying that it's not possible to do a 1031 on it?
I did not say that one. You can actually do what we said is a partial exchange. So we'll go back to that $500,000 relinquished sale price minus commissions and closing costs. Now your net sales price, not maybe your net proceeds, but your net sales price is $480,000. You buy a property for $400,000. That's all you could find. That's what you love. That's what you want to buy into. So now you got $80,000 left over. Well, what happens to that? And this is going to blow your mind, because that $80,000 is what they call in the tax code boot, BOOT.
Like pirate booty?
Exactly. It is from, like, we got our independence, and they kept some of the tax code terms from the English. So boot is an old English term, and all essentially it means is it's non-like kind equity, or a non-like cash or personal property or whatever. So in that case, that $80,000 would be boot, and you're subject to capital gains tax on the 80, but the rest of the $400,000 is part of the deferment on the exchange.
Got it. So anything that's additionally left over is what you pay taxes on, and the other is what you get the exemption on.
Right. And I got clients that want to pull the money out, so they don't want to put it all in the next property. They want to pull out $80,000. So they'll pull it out knowing that they have to pay capital gains tax on that 80, but the majority of it's going to be deferred.
Oh, so that's a strategy on how you can liquidate
you can pull a little bit out at a time. Yeah.
Goodness.
Dude, I'm feeling like we need a whole other thing on like deep diving with Rick. Anybody else agree on that one? Put a D in the chat if you think we need a deeper dive with Rick in the future, guys.
I think we need to bring you back on here again, Rick.
Yeah,
because there's so much that we're like learning here. Is there any special paperwork, or is there a disclosure I need to put into a contract to let people?
You have to disclose it. Yeah, okay. You do have to disclose you're doing a 1031 exchange. And when you do that, it just has to be done before close of escrow. So it can be done at the signing table, or it can be done on the MLS, or somewhere in between. And that's it. The paperwork, we handle all the paperwork on it. All I need to have to set up the exchange is the contract, who you're using for the closing, and the contact information for the exchanger.
And then we make it super easy on that part too, because when you guys are opening escrow at Fidelity, like you tell your escrow officer this is a 1031, there's a seamless integration with Rick and his department, right? So absolutely, you don't even have to do extra steps. Like, we just make it all happen for you.
It goes on autopilot. Because my people work with your people all the time.
Amazing. Have you been getting any texts, Rick?
Oh, let's see. I have.
There you go.
Look at that. I don't know if you can zoom in and then it's a little bright.
It's a little bright.
Oh,
but yeah.
I'm responding to somebody. I better stop.
All right, I got a future question for you, Rick. Sure. What about what do you see coming down the pike? Like any developments, changes in the regulations, anything that you're foreseeing in the future?
Well, what I foresee in the future is that we're going to get taxed more. So 1031 exchange, if you look into it, it's been in the tax code for over 100 years. And that's where a lot of people don't know about it. But every single time that you get Washington gets involved and they need to scramble up some more tax money, 1031 exchange is on the chopping block. But it hasn't been successful. We're pretty confident on both sides of the aisle, because we've been doing a lot of education to Washington on the benefits of it. So they see it the same way as get rid of 1031 exchange so we can start making all this capital gains tax.
Yeah, so then you disincentivize the investors from doing them. And then now we have housing problems, so you can't.
Exactly.
We still need to put Americans somewhere to live. So no, you can't do that. Why would you disincentivize me from being in the business of rentals?
Exactly. So that numbers we've given to Washington on both sides of the aisle, and for the most part, they got it. But you never know, it could still come up again. And then that's where I'll be calling on you guys' support to write your local congressman or your local supportive. So, but for the most part, we're good to go there. What I have heard when we're sitting there educating Washington is that capital gains tax is going to go up. If you don't know what capital gains tax is right now, it's a percentage either from 15 to 20%, depending on what your income is. And then there's a state capital gains tax.
Wait, for real estate specific or all investments?
Capital gains tax, period.
Long and short term?
Yeah, if you went to Bear Jackson and you had 1,000, well, no, short term is even higher. I'm talking about long term. So if you went to Bear Jackson and you sold a car that you bought for $1,500 back in the 60s and sold it for $1 million, that's capital gains tax. Unfortunately, you're going to have to pay it because you don't do 1031 exchange on personal property anymore. They reformed it in 2017, but everything else counts that you can do a 1031 exchange and defer it.
Can I 1031 a business?
That's the part that they took out of the tax equation in 2017. Personal property is no longer exchangeable, only the real property. But there's what they consider real property is those land, commercial, residential. But the other things that they don't tell you is that I do billboards exchanges. I've done satellite cell phone tower exchanges. I've done gold mine claims exchanges, oil and mineral rights, as long as they own the land.
What?
Yeah, if they own the land, like I just did one a few months ago. Guy had 3 cell phone towers on his property out there in Minnesota, and he sold them for pretty good money to one of those national cell phone providers that managed them. And he took it, sold it, and bought a single family for a couple of his grandkids. So like kind, you would never think you could sell a cell phone tower and buy single family. And the only reason it qualified is he owned the easement that the cell phone tower sat on. So that's where that part comes in. Billboards, as long as you own the land or the easement, or it's a thoroughly.
What if it's a business and you own the real estate the business operates in?
Well, that's the thing. So like we do a lot of gas stations. I'm doing a Chick-fil-A right now. Some of those businesses, it's just a matter of sitting down with your tax advisor and seeing what the value of the business is versus the real estate, and where you can make those numbers work on that side of having that conversation with your tax advisor. But the actual brand, like the Chick-fil-A, that was an $8 million transaction, and I think that they were able to do a 1031 exchange on the 7 million portion. So for the most part, you can get most of it is the value of the land.
Wow. Galen's still trying to figure out how to move into his rental. He wants to know, do I need proof that I'm living in the property, or can I just claim the address on my taxes? I don't want to switch AZ for Wisconsin weather. It's not worth $100,000.
Here's the thing. The IRS knows what you tell them. So, and they have this little formula that if you claim this property as your primary residence, they're going to look into seeing if you live there and whatever they decide to do on that side of it. So I can only tell you what they're going to look at, but what you do is on your side of that, or what your tax advisor says. They don't go knocking on your door to see what's going on there. But if it makes sense when you're filing your taxes, it makes sense, and the less red flags, the better. Because the only time that they will figure out anything is if they pull an audit on you. So you want to make sure that your intent is what we've been talking about here today.
You couldn't do a 1031 on like a leveraged buyout on a business, could you?
Possibly, if it depends again on how much of that buyout is the real estate.
I think that's what this question was, like, just selling out. You get in, for those of you that don't know what I just said, that's when you buy a company and you essentially buy a company with its own money, and then you tear the company apart from the inside out, sell off the pieces, and keep what's left.
Right. So the real estate portion of it you can, but the personal side, no. Wow. But the other thing is that, and I don't want to throw you off again, but 30-year lease terms is considered like kind. So you can buy properties on a 30-year lease and then consider that as that you can do a 1031 exchange. Like here in Scottsdale, we got off the 101. There's a big chunk of real estate that is Native Indian land that's on a 100-year lease. So those ones qualify to do 1031 exchange, even though they don't own the land, they just own the lease.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. I have some investors, that's what they do, is they buy on lease and they buy on contract, and then they can exchange from that too as well.
Is there a way to 1031 in the Great White North?
No. Short answer is no. But
this is first no the whole episode, really. Yeah. Like that's a hard no. That was the first one.
Yeah, that's a no, but they qualify. So a Canadian or foreign investor qualifies to do a 1031 exchange. as long as they have a social security number, file taxes, or an ITIN number.
Right.
Then they would qualify, and they can avoid FERPTA too as well, that 15% withholding, by doing an exchange.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That I've been involved in a transaction where they actually had to withhold that money. And for those of you that don't know,
Well, they will withhold it, but if you do it, there's a couple ways to avoid the FERPTA withholdings. Is that you can do a simultaneous close, so where you sell one, buy one at the same time frame. And then the other one is if they're going to take the 15%. We'll say on 100,000, they take 15 grand. If you have 15 grand in the bank, put it into the exchange so it's tax deferred, then they'll give you back that 15% down the road because you deferred it in a 1031 exchange. So there's a few ways to get around that.
Wow.
That's amazing. Okay, Rick, what if you had like 3 pieces of advice for investors? Like, what would that be, given our audience today?
Do their homework up front. So if you're thinking about selling a property, and it may be 6 months down the road or a year down the road, contact somebody like me, contact you guys, contact all the experts so that you have a good game plan before you do it. Because I get a lot of blow up exchanges at the last minute, and most of them, I'll tell you what it is partnerships. So you might have bought a property with a partnership, and that taxpayer is the partnership. And, just like anything, that partnership wants to go their separate ways. But at the last minute, we can't revest it and change it. It is what it is. And if you're closing tomorrow and it was a partnership, but one partner wants to take cash out and the other one wants to do an exchange, we can't do the exchange. They both partners would have to agree. So if you had that information up front, you could find out that you could have changed it very simply, just going through title, quit claiming it to individuals or tenants in common. And then now you have 2 entities within an entity, and you can do both, go your separate ways. Wow. But knowledge is power. Just
so
getting that information up front.
So basically you can do a 1031 even in a breakup.
Even in a breakup, yeah. I do a lot of divorce ones, unfortunately, too. So if it's disclosed in the divorce decree that this is what the split is, then we can do an exchange that way, too.
I think we know the answer to this one. Property doesn't need to be owned outright, correct?
No. You can have debt on the property.
Amazing. I think, Dina, we need to ask him the question.
I think we need to do the fun. We need to like put Rick on the spot right now.
Let's go.
Who wants hot seat? Who wants a hot seat? He's been such a smooth, situation so far. Okay, Rick, what was the last thing you Googled?
What's the last thing I Googled?
You can look at your phone for this.
No, I know the answer. That last minute deal, I Googled the realtor on that one, a commercial broker. I wanted to see who it was that put that together at the last minute.
Oh, yeah. All right.
He's coming out of California, so I Googled him because he's a last minute guy. I think he knows about 1031 exchanges, but I'm going to put him in my CRM so he gets my monthly newsletter, so that he's aware next time not to let me run around at the last minute.
And you know what? Your newsletter is super informative, Rick. Yeah. So guys, if you guys want to subscribe to Rick's newsletter, he's always putting out tons of education. Can you give out your email address so that they can contact you to subscribe to your newsletter?
Yeah. It's my email. It's just my first and last name, Rick.Wittstock, WITTSTOCK at IPX1031.com. Just shoot me an email, and with your contact information, I can set that newsletter up to you. I only send it out once a month, and it's all related on 1031 exchange stuff.
And there's tons of great advice in that. Okay, what about this? What's something, we're going to go personal here. What's something that most people think is super ordinary and they've done, but like you've never done it? So, for example, I've never eaten a hamburger. That's like a normal thing. Not for me.
I still can't believe that shit.
I've never tried that ice cream. What's it? The icy ice cream that the Italians call it?
A gelato?
Gelato. I've never had a gelato.
Oh, you guys, if you're loving Title Talk, send Rick some gelato. There's
a great gelato place probably from my home that's maybe 2 miles away. I want to try it, but I'm not a big sweet guy. I'm more of a,
Savory,
chocolate.
salty.
Yeah, salty's my thing. So maybe that's why. There's the opportunity, I just never have. But it's always popular. It's like a lineup going out the door. So it sounds like it's popular.
And what are you reading right now?
I'm reading the email on the screen right here.
No, but like any books, anything in your
No, I don't. This sounds bad, but I switched to audiobooks now. So a lot of things I'm
Audios
reading
are
now. Yeah, I switched to that. I try to put on different podcasts every now and then. I'm just like you guys. I'm always looking to see what the trend is in real estate on all sides of things, because I deal with everybody. So when it comes to investment, so I'm always looking and learning that way too.
All right. Now, what's the most memorable deal you've ever done? Like, give us a horror story because Halloween is right around the corner. So something
Horror
spooky,
story?
a horror story, something memorable, maybe kept you up at night.
Well, there was a deal a few years ago. It was, and this one was a big deal that it was a brother and sister that inherited a $50 million ranch. And they called me a week before close of escrow and said, can we set up an exchange? So having conference calls back and forth with all the attorneys that get involved in these larger transactions, we got down to the wire, and what we ended up doing is, or had to do, is we had to change it from partnership that owned the property into separate individuals. So the sister wanted to do an exchange on her $25 million. The brother did not want to do it. So, but he was open to revesting the property into two separate entities. And where things went crazy, I was banking on this deal going together. We didn't have enough time. So went to escrow, went to title. It wasn't with Fidelity, it was with another company. And
Boo!
And
that's why I probably went sideways.
Yeah. So on Wednesday, closing on Friday, they needed another couple days to change or revest the title. So Monday or Tuesday. So we had to get an extension. Everybody agreed except for the brother.
Oh, what a dude.
Yeah,
what a guy.
He's like, I'm all willing to do everything he says, but I'm not gonna go outside closing on Friday. So I think he had a side deal with somebody that he had to pay a lot of money on Friday or something. But yeah, he blew it for everybody. So everybody put all these man hours in. He did not want to get an extension. Even the buyers were okay with extending it to Monday or Tuesday. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't budge. So closed on Friday. They all had to pay their taxes.
Oh, what a guy.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Rick,
so the horror story is that I was banked on that deal already happening, and it didn't happen.
And do you make more money on a bigger deal like that versus a small one? Okay.
Yeah.
So the fee increases based off of the size of the transaction?
So not by much. I mean, most transactions, $1 million or less, it's only $1,050 to do an exchange.
Really?
Yeah. It's not that over the top pricing. No, it gets up to the $50 million range. It gets into the $5,000 or $6,000 range, but that's
nothing.
That's nothing compared to the taxes that you'd be paying. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been so special. Guys, share this with your friends. Give us love. If you're going to be listening to this on the podcast when that goes live in a few minutes, instead of on social, give us a 5-star review because Rick has been amazing.
Absolutely.
5 stars.
We'll definitely bring you back here, Rick. You were absolutely a joy to interview, to talk to. I learned a lot. The dogs learned a lot. The cat learned a lot.
The dog's still awake, so that's good.
Yeah, he's like, he wants to do a 1031 right now. He's like, what's up?
Can I 1031 her?
Yeah, for another extension.
Incredible. Really, really appreciate you, Rick. And to everybody who tuned in again, thank you guys for tuning in to Title Talk. Again, like Dina asked, leave us a 5-star review. Please like and share. And share this one with your friends, because this probably was one of the best episodes we've ever done. There were so many nuggets. Rick, you and I need to have lunch. I've got to figure out how we can sell you, how I can help you just always have properties available for your buyers. So there's going to be a great opportunity there. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Guys, thanks for having me.
See you in 2 weeks. Thank you, Rick.